I may take the liberty of beginning by saying something about myself and my role in talking to you about philosophical matters, because I want it to be perfectly clear that I'm not a guru. In other words, I talk about what we call these things, a multitude of interests concerning Oriental philosophy, psychotherapy, religion, mysticism, etc., because I'm interested in them and enjoy talking about them. And every sensible person makes their living by doing what they enjoy, which explains me. Now, in saying that I am not a guru, it also means I'm not trying to help or improve you. I accept you as you are. I am not out to save the world. Of course, when a bubbling spring flows out from the mountains, it's simply doing its thing. If a thirsty traveler helps themselves, well, that's fine. When a bird sings, it doesn't sing for the advancement of music. But if someone stops to listen and is delighted, that's fine too. And so, I talk in the same spirit. I don't have a group of followers. I'm not trying to make disciples because I work on the principle of a physician rather than a clergyman. A physician's goal is to get rid of their patients, sending them away healthy and standing on their own feet, whereas a clergyman often seeks to gain members for a religious organization, ensuring they pay pledges, support the church, and boost its membership to validate its teachings. My objective is to get rid of you so you won't need me or anyone else to guide you. Some of my colleagues wouldn't approve of this attitude because it's widely believed that to advance in the spiritual life, whatever that means, you must have a guru and obey them perfectly. I'm often asked, is it really necessary to have a guru? I can only answer, yes, if you think so. It's similar to the saying, anyone who goes to a psychiatrist ought to have their head examined. There's more to this than meets the ear. If you're sincerely concerned about your state and feel you must talk to a psychiatrist, then of course you should go. Likewise, if you feel you need someone to guide you toward meditation, nirvana, moksha, or any similar state, then you must have a guru, because, as William Blake said, the fool who persists in his folly will become wise. But let me point something out. What is the source of a guru's authority? A guru might claim to speak from experience, having achieved profound bliss, understanding, or compassion. You have their word, and perhaps the word of others who agree with them, but you judge their authority based on your own opinion. Whether the guru speaks as an individual or represents a tradition or church, their authority ultimately depends on you, the follower, believing it. Take the Bible or the Roman Catholic Church as examples. The Church might argue that personal mystical experiences aren't trustworthy due to their subjective nature and must be guided by its objective traditions. Yet, those traditions are deemed objective only because followers say so. The question always comes back to you. Why do you believe? Why do you form this opinion? Upon what basis does all this rest? Almost everyone is searching for help. When we feel helpless, alone, and confused in this unpredictable, often tragic world, we wonder, why are we here? How did we get here? What can we do about the great problem of life? To that question we must also add death, because we all face it. Those we love will die, and so will we. What can we do about it? There are countless ways to escape the human predicament of being a lonely, isolated consciousness amidst an enormous, unpredictable world. We might seek wealth, power, or technology to solve our suffering. Yet, even when these pursuits succeed, we're not satisfied. If you believe an increase in income will solve your problems, it might bring relief for a few weeks. But soon, new worries arise. If you're rich, you might worry about sickness, death, or losing your fortune. The root of the problem isn't external circumstances. It's the mind. So, could you control your mind to stop worrying? Many suggest thinking positive thoughts, breathing slowly, or repeating affirmations like, all is light, or all is good. But often, these don't work. There's a nagging thought in the back of your mind, a Hintergedank. As the Germans say, what if this isn't real? Controlling the mind is no simple task because beneath our conscious thoughts lies the unconscious, unpredictable and powerful. This brings people to psychoanalysis or to gurus, hoping to uncover hidden aspects of themselves. Yet, there's an awkward problem here. How do you change yourself? Trying to improve yourself is like attempting to lift yourself off the ground by pulling on your own bootstraps. It's an impossible task. This dilemma has puzzled great religious traditions. In Christianity, St. Augustine argued that we cannot love God or our neighbor without divine grace because we are incapable of such love on our own. Grace is offered freely, yet some receive it and others do not. Why? We find ourselves at the same impasse. How do you let go and give in? How do you relax? Paul the Apostle captured this perfectly. The will is present with me, but how to do that which is good, I find hard. For the good that I would, I do not, and the evil I would not, that I do. At our core lies what Jewish thought calls the Yetzer Hara, our wayward spirit, our rascality. We are, in essence, scamps, and until we confront this truth about ourselves, transformation is impossible. So, how do we resolve this? How do we reconcile the ego and the higher self? The truth is, human experience exists by contrast. We only know light because of darkness, happiness because of sorrow, and victory because of defeat. The philosophy of the I Ching captures this beautifully. Life is a balance of yin and yang, yes and no, positive and negative. We often strive for yang without yin, winning without losing. But a life without contrast is flat. Saints cannot exist without sinners, and saviors cannot exist without fools. As Isaiah said, I form the light and create the darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And there is no way out of that dilemma. That is why Buddhism represents existence in terms of a wheel called the Bhavacakra, the wheel of becoming, of birth and death. At the top of that wheel, there are Deva people whom we would call angels. At the bottom, there are Naraka, or tormented people in purgatory. You go round and round, now this way, now that way. It's really like a squirrel cage where you're running and running to get to the top, yet you have to run faster and faster just to stay where you are. That's why there is always the sense that the more you succeed, whether in worldly or spiritual progress, the more you have the haunting feeling that you're still in the same place. So, you think there must be some way out of that. Perhaps there's something ambitious, proud, or wrong in aspiring to be enlightened or compassionate. Perhaps there's a great dose of spiritual pride in thinking that I, by my efforts, could make myself into a Buddha or a saint. And therefore, perhaps the thing to do is try to eliminate all desire, not only the desire for worldly success but also the desire for spiritual success. The Buddha proposed that desire was the root of suffering and, therefore, suggested to his arhats that if they eliminated desire or clinging, they might cease suffering. But you must realize that the so-called teachings of the Buddha are not doctrines in the sense that Jews, Christians, or Muslims have doctrines. They are proposals, the opening steps in a dialogue. If you go away and try not to desire in any way, you will very quickly discover that you are desiring not to desire. So, to get with yourself is to reach the moment where you begin all this questioning. Where does the question come from? Where does the desire spring from? Well, that's you. And that you is the point from which the whole universe is created, flowing back into the past like the wake of a ship. The wake doesn't drive the ship makes the wake. So here you are, producing it, and meditation is just sitting here and watching it happen. It's not done because it's good for you, it's done for fun. I might even say meditation is a fun thing, and if it isn't, you're not meditating. There's an awful game meditators play, which is competitive suffering. They go to some place where they sit for hours on end until their legs ache and practically fall off. Then they come back and brag about how they sat through all those hours of leg aching. Now, it's very difficult to put down people who are suffering because, after all, one has a natural sympathy for pain. But I sometimes want to say, for goodness sake, don't throw your suffering at me in that way and in that spirit. Don't brag about it. Don't one-up me by saying, well, I've suffered more than you. People do things like that. They say, well, I'm more aware of my shortcomings than you. Or, I'm more tolerant than you are. Or, I recognize more than you do what a rascal I am. Every kind of way to one-up somebody else in order to play the game in which I always win. So, once we get into that kind of thing with the meditation scene, we create hierarchies and ranks and degrees. Who has attained level 7? Who has attained level 9? And then, an expert guru will invent a stage higher than anyone has thought of, just to see how far your ambition will run. And this goes on endlessly, endlessly, endlessly until you suddenly wake up. Then you realize that you do really meditate all the time, by virtue of existing all the time. Only, you miss that eternal now by always looking for something in the next minute, expecting a result. Now, you might say, Let me not expect a result. But one does anyhow. So you might as well just sit and enjoy it. Image of man. I want to start by giving what may be to many of you a new definition of the word myth. As normally used, the word myth means an idle tale, a fable, a falsehood, or an idea that is out of date, something untrue. But there is another, older, and stricter use of the word myth, whereby it doesn't mean something untrue. It means an image, in terms of which people make sense of life and the world. Suppose, for example, you do not understand the technicalities of electricity. Someone wants to explain it to you. They compare electricity to water because you understand water, and through this comparison, you may grasp some idea of how electricity behaves. Or, if an astronomer wants to explain to you what they mean by expanding space, they might use the metaphor of a balloon, a black balloon with white spots on it. The white spots represent the galaxies, and as you blow up the balloon, they all move farther away from one another at the same speed. In neither case are we saying that electricity is water or that the universe is a balloon. We're saying it's something like it. In the same way, humans have always used images to represent their deepest ideas about how the universe works and what man's place in it is. Tonight, I'm going to discuss aspects of two of the greatest myths, in this sense of the word, that have influenced humankind's thinking. First, the myth of the universe as an artifact, as something made. Like a carpenter makes tables, chairs, or houses. Like a potter makes pots, or like a sculptor makes figurines. And second, the image of the world as a drama, in which all things in the world are not made but acted in the same way a player acts parts. These are the two great images that govern, respectively, the religions of the West and those originating in India. Western religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, descend from Hebraism and carry the artifact model. Meanwhile, religions rooted in India, most notably Hinduism and, to a lesser extent, Buddhism, embrace the dramatic model. I want to make it perfectly plain before going further that in talking about these two great religious traditions in terms of images, I'm discussing how they express themselves at a more popular level. Sophisticated Christians and Hindus think beyond images. For instance, a Christian might think of God as a father, but a sophisticated Christian doesn't literally imagine God as a cosmic male parent with a white beard sitting on a golden throne above the stars. Similarly, a Hindu doesn't literally think of God as a great showman or actor. These images are metaphors, they are what it's like, not what it is. Perhaps when we finish discussing them, we can ask whether any of these images still make sense to us in the modern age, shaped so powerfully by Western science. And so, I used to hope that, on wet afternoons in heaven, we would all be able to sit around the throne of grace and say to the Lord, "Why did you do this?" And, "Why did you do that?" And he would explain. Every child in the West asks his mother, "How was I made?" And nobody knows. But they know that somebody perhaps does, and that would be God. And he will be able to explain. Likewise, if anybody gets mentally deranged and claims to be God, we always humor such people by asking them technical questions like, "How did you make the world in 6 days?" Or, "If you are God, why couldn't you change this plate into a rabbit?" That is because, in our popular image of God, God is the supreme technocrat. He knows all the answers. He understands everything in detail and could tell you all about it. But the Hindus don't think of God that way. If you ask the Hindu God, "How did you create the human body?" he would say, "Look, I know how I did it, but it can't be explained in words because words are too clumsy. In words, I have to talk about things slowly. I have to string them out because words run in a line. Lines add up to books, and books add up to libraries. If I explain to you how I made the human organism, it will take all eternity for me to tell you. Unfortunately, I don't have to understand things in words in order to make them happen. Nor do you. You don't have to understand, in words, how you breathe. You just breathe. You don't have to understand, in words, how to grow your hair, how to shape your bones, or how to make your eyes blue or brown.